for sharing your vision of Domain 5 D3. I'm excited to be here. I just joined them. My name's Anand Vora. I'm excited to introduce two people that I've had the pleasure of knowing and working and interacting with for over 15 years. This is the bridge between Web 2 and Web 3. Michael Riedl, the CEO of Team Internet, is going to walk us through what the future of domain name system and the industry looks like in 2025. And Andrew Allman is going to do the fireside chat with him. Andrew is the editor and the founder of Domain Name Wire. The native Web 2 people know this because it's the go-to place to get domain name news. Native Web 3, check out his page. And yeah, I'm excited to have you guys here. Let's take this. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand.
Well, I can already tell the domain industry is changing, because if this were a true domain conference, a Web 2 domain conference, if you will, we would be behind schedule, but we are actually ahead of schedule. So it's really exciting to be here. A lot of us in this room were at the ICA conference for the past couple of years, and I think by design, the domain name system works kind of slowly, as Fred was pointing out. And today, of course, we're going to be learning about a lot of stuff about how this could change in the future. But we're going to kick off by talking about what the reality is of the domain industry now and how it's changing. And I can think of no one better to talk about this than Michael Riedl, who is the CEO of Team Internet Group, because you have your hands in all aspects of the domain industry. So it's great to have you here on stage. Why don't we start by talking about what Team Internet does?
Thank you, Andrew. Great to see you again. I still fondly remember your interview for your podcast in 2023. So my name is Michael Riedl. I'm the CEO of Team Internet Group PLC. Team Internet Group operates several businesses. First, we are very well known for our domain name offerings, most of them under the CentralNIC label, where we provide international hosting companies like GoDaddy, WordPress, and others with international domain names so that they can always deliver whatever the customers need. We then also are Google's largest search syndication partner with running Tonic, our search arbitrage business, and Parking Crew, where we are among the top few domain parking companies, which is not directly domain name business, but the fate of this domain park industry is, of course, very closely correlated with the prospects of the domain industry in its own right. And then our latest business is actually operating product comparison websites, where we actually connect users who start a product search on search engines and bring them to the right Amazon store partners. And that's currently a joy to run, going completely off the charts. But that's not the topic for today. Today is about domain names, Web 2 and Web 3. Thank you.
Let's dig into each of those segments. So if I think about, I go to register a domain. Most end users see a domain name registrar. You have what, Moniker, you have, what are some of the other registrars? There are a bunch of them, and they're Team Internet.
Right. So by pure numbers, actually our CentralNIC registry offering is the largest. If you just look at DUMs, domain names under management. So here we are basically a back-end provider for almost every second new top-level domain on this planet. Then in the domain registrar part, CentralNIC Reseller is our largest platform. This is basically the program for which we enable hosting companies worldwide to always fulfill their customer orders, whether they need a domain name from Vietnam or the Central African Republic, we can always deliver. And after that, we then have our brand shelter offering, where we are the trusted partner of some of the largest brands here in the United States, for example, Johnson & Johnson, or if you look into Europe, Mercedes-Benz and Rolex and many others would rely on our services to basically advise them to take all the domain names that normally cyber squatters would take. But last but not least, we of course also have our retail domain offering, like Moniker.com, where probably also quite a few people in this room will have their domain portfolios.
So the domains under management is obviously a measure that most domain name companies use in some manner. And over the past couple of years, just the overall pie of domains hasn't been growing, right? We see VeriSign reporting declines. They run .com, .net. We see country code domains maybe moving 1% to 2%, but the overall market is growing very slowly. What do you think is driving this, and do you see if there's something that might change this in the future?
Right. So I think this is a quite multifaceted question. So first of all, while VeriSign specifically sees some decline at this point in time, it might also be partially a reaction to their relentless series of price hikes, which have just put other top-level domains back on the map. If you take a little bit a longer view over, let's say, the last 5 years, you still see a very nice, almost linear growth pattern. So I wouldn't just think that we have seen the end of this growth just because you might have 1 or 2 quarters of slower growth. But let me maybe first start with some analysis. What's growing and what's not growing, and then look into the reasons for why that might be. It is true that .net have pretty much stalled. Also ccTLDs in total are also experiencing the lowest growth rates in many years. However, there are some very healthy pockets of growth. For example, new top-level domains have grown by 17% from 2023 to 2024. And we can come to that in a minute. The fastest growing segment are, however, what I call quasi GTLDs or repurposed ccTLDs, like .ai, which is probably the most prominent example, where now this island of Anguilla is suddenly the synonym for artificial intelligence. But we see some other domains that sell like hotcakes, like .io for the British Indian Ocean territories, where, of course, with the current situation, we will need to see what's happening to the .io zone. But then there's others like, for example, .co as a very hip alternative to .com. And this segment has actually grown by 73% from 2023 to 2024. So while the total cake grows at probably the slowest rate in many, many years, there are still quite a few notable exceptions to that.
Yeah, it strikes me when we look at even IO and AI and all these names, this industry spends a lot of money on marketing its domains. VeriSign obviously spends a lot of marketing, all the new top-level domains, whereas those ones you just mentioned grew organically, right? It's kind of interesting to think about with Anguilla. It's just like, well, AI is hot. Let's go get their domain name. And then IO is also kind of organic as well. I'm curious what you think about kind of how much growth can be done through marketing in this business.
Well, I would think marketing is the secret of success to every successful brand. There was never a guarantee that GoDaddy would be the biggest domain registrar in the world. They just believed very firmly in the future of this industry, invested very heavily into marketing when many of the other startups that many of you created from their dorms at university could just not compete, whereas the other guys were shelling out $4 million for a Super Bowl ad, and this has taken them to a #1 position, which has now continued for almost a quarter century. So I would say, yes, marketing is key, and therefore I think every new venture, whether it's for a new top-level domain or for a new crypto coin, should always have a notable marketing budget in their plan.
So let's talk about the registry business, because I was about to say CentralNic, your former name, but I guess that is the name of the registry still?
Yes, we in the registry business, we still trade under CentralNic.
Okay, so the registry business, I think back to 2012 was the last round of new top-level domain names, and we all had a lot of expectations for what it would look like, and I think everyone was wrong in one way and right in another, but CentralNic kind of emerged as a top registry from that era. What have you seen with the the new TLD operators on CentralNic? What has helped them grow? Because you have some of the largest.
Right, and it's a quite consistent pattern that almost all the market leaders who don't have their own registry backend are all with us, whether it's in .xyz or the Radix group or short dot. Actually, first of all, I would like to state that I think the NTLD program has been a big success. Today, about 10% of all domain names in existence are NTLDs, and this is a number from, I think, November. By now, I think we have like 41 over 360 domain names, so it's already 11% by now. Whereas, for example, all legacy GTLDs, if we take .com and .net out of the equation, only represent less than 5%. So basically, the new top-level domains that were created are now more than twice as many domain names as all the .infos, .museum, .arrow, and everything else that existed historically. So I think that's success. When we then look into the patterns, what has gone very well and what has not gone so well, I think in 2012, the industry was very much driven by the expectation that the top-level domain would be a strong driver for SEO success. And this is why quite a few people have bet on very descriptive keyword domains, going from a .college to a .horse. And but the big success is actually in the more generic the domain name is, the more sales there are, with XYZ as now the leading top-level domain.
And that's on CentralNick, right?
That also runs on CentralNick. But interestingly enough, while everyone, because of the false belief that Google would make this a very strong search engine signal, I still remember the Domain Fest 2014 in Hollywood, when Dan Negari went on stage and said, "Hey guys, you all know me because of .college, but I tell you, my biggest success will be .xyz, and I tell you why, because it's as generic as it could be," and you could really see like the jaws dropping to the floor, and everyone was thinking, what does this guy know? Well, now 10 years later, we see that he was right.
Yeah, I distinctly remember people saying, "Man, imagine what Daniel could do with a good domain extension." So, but so a lot of the growth, I think what we saw in new top-level domains was this model of almost giving away domains for the first year, right, and then hoping people renew them. That seems like it was the winning model. And I'm kind of curious, like I think back to when people were signing contracts for these, a lot of them were like XYZ, XYZ would come up, and it would be like a fixed dollar amount per domain. And that ended up, like, I don't know how you can do that if you're giving domains away for a quarter or for $1. Did you have to change your business model as a registry to kind of adapt to the market there?
Well, I think part of the success that we had as a registry provider in the early days was that we were the first ones to come up with the idea of a revenue share-based model. Many of the incumbents, like Verisign and others who also came into the market, who could have very easily cornered the entire market for them just with the expertise and the resources that they had, they were insisting, look, we are selling .com at, well, at that time I think it was $7.85, not the current double-digit prices. So we'll charge you $2 per domain name, $4 per domain name, which of course barred these strategies or would have made it prohibitively expensive. Whereas we went out and said, look, we are going to share the risk. We are just operating with you on a revenue share basis. You could basically lower your price as much as you wanted. Maybe at the exception, you still have considered 25% ICANN tax on the new top-level domain, which they are now planning to increase. And that has proven very successful. And while it doesn't look like a very good idea in the first place, when you have a vision for an industry, I think it's a very powerful strategy, and you just have to stick to it and be persistent. Look, for example, at small business apps, something that also started around, like, let's say, 15 to 20 years to become popular. Many were saying, this is terrible, all these apps are for free, how would I ever make money out of this? And then there were only these, on average, 4% of customers who then later opted for the paid version. And in the beginning, it was very small because it was only 4% of the early adopters. But if you then stick to this pattern and you just stick through to it and you just believe in it and you do the same thing for 10 years, then bit by bit, you're accumulating this paying customer base, and then and now we see a lot of these businesses like a Shopify being among the most valuable businesses on this planet, and also others who have adopted a similar strategy have also seen success. Yes, it's very painful to basically give your domain names for free. You will only see very low renewal rates, but low renewal rates on vast volumes of first registrations. And then if you just stick to it for a decade, it will finally accumulate, and then you end up with a very successful registry business.
Right. And XYZ obviously did that. That was one of the ones that did it. And then crypto happened, and everyone loved .xyz for it, and it really took off. I'm curious what you see. So we might have a new round of new top-level domains next year. I say that some of the people that are very familiar with ICANN are snickering here about, well, maybe, or it could be another 5 years, who knows. I'm curious what you think. We've seen a lot of companies like D3 announce extensions they're going after. What percentage or what magnitude do you think kind of Web3 companies will play in the next round of new top-level domain expansion?
Well, I think my thoughts here are a bit bifurcated. So I have a very strong belief that blockchain technology is one of the greatest inventions. Well, maybe fire was still on the same order of magnitude, but that was a long time ago. And when we look at the genesis of domain names, and actually domain names were invented in 1983, so that's now more than 40 years ago. The purpose was basically to make the internet navigable for human beings who just struggled to remember IPv4 addresses, and now with IPv6, it's even more challenging. And the one of the virtues of domain names are that it make them memorable, and it made them unique. So there's only one Amazon.com, and if you type Amazon.com in your browser today and tomorrow, you can always count on going to the same website that you trust. I think for actual Web3 domain names to become a success, I think we somehow need to implement these virtues in Web3 domain names as well. Because if we don't get conflict resolution under control, some instance will need to do it. And my expectation would be if this is the world scenario in which we are drifting, there's only very few companies who could legitimately claim this place, which is first Google and then maybe Microsoft, because Google controls the most popular browser, they control the most popular search engine, so they would be probably the only guys who can go out there. It doesn't matter if there's 1,000 Amazon.coms on different blockchains. We will decide for the user which of these domains to resolve if they type Amazon.com into the browser. Whether that is an outcome that we wish for as consumers, as business operators, I don't know. I would rather say no. Where, however, at the same time, blockchain offers a lot of potential to overcome some of the deficits that the founding fathers of the internet as we know it maybe have not foreseen. And these weaknesses are particularly proof of ownership. Now we only have pretty much unvetted, uncontrolled who-is records that could be manipulated, where there's no clear proof how to prove that you are actually the person on the who-is record. I think this is something that blockchain technology can truly overcome and create something more, a really enhanced ICANN compatible domain name system. The second weakness of the existing domain name system is transfer of ownership. I mean, sending EPP codes around by email, having it intercepted, abused in any kind of way, having a 5-day transfer window. I mean, how 1983 is that? So I think this is really up for renewal. Also here, blockchain ownership or blockchain technology could enable much faster transfer processes where basically you trade instantly, taking escrow services. Sorry for if someone escrow.com is in here. Could run escrow services redundant because you could basically directly link the transfer of the ownership to the payment, which could also happen in cryptocurrency. So I think this is something that is almost evident that it must happen. It's almost impossible to see that it wouldn't happen. And the last thing or thing and a half is then fractional ownership, which is completely unforeseen in the current ecosystem. You can't have shared ownership over a domain name. What has happened in the past, buddies then started an LLC together that was then owning a single high-value domain name or a certain domain portfolio, but why go through all that legal hassle and file tax reports and always keep the LLC in good standing when blockchain technology could do the same thing and basically tokenize your domain name, which would then also then facilitate things like domain leasing to a much better degree than is possible in the old value chain. And I think these things, because they only have advantages without the conflict resolution challenges that we would see if we then see, let's say, a second alt route on blockchains, this simply must happen. And I'm a firm believer. We just need to see what kind of technology will finally prevail.
So to unpack that a little bit, if we look at the current state, there are a few exceptions. I see people in the room here who operate, let's call them real top-level domains, ICANN top-level domains that have married them with blockchain. It seemed like a lot of the initial blockchain quote-unquote domains were alt-root domain names, as we would call them, which were like, hey, let's come up with something else. Let's call it .crypto.wallet, whether that's in Handshake or a proprietary system. And this will be used, you could use it as a website, which hardly anyone does. I guess the more common use case would be use it as a wallet. But then you've got that name collision or that conflict resolution, which is, well, which blockchain is this in? If I'm using this app, does this domain work or will actually send my money somewhere else? Whereas you think that if we build on the traditional DNS, which Fred earlier was showing, that's how their system is built on top of the existing ICANN system, then blockchain technology can enhance what we have today.
Right. And so Fred's vision, as he just portrayed it, resonates very well with my second scenario where blockchain will basically enhance and the existing system and eliminate the shortcomings. Because I was thinking about another reason why we would need more top-level domains. And the pure number, this can't be the driver. So every top-level domain, I think almost every top-level domain allows 63 characters for the second-level domain, with already 36 options from A through Z and 0 through 9, and even a hyphen for the middle 61. If you do the math, with only the existing number of top-level domains, that allows for 10 to the power of 101 different domain names.
Second-level domains, yeah.
Second-level domains, just in the existing system, which is a few hundred times more than the number of IP addresses allowed under IPv6. So a scarcity of strings can definitely not be a driver why we would need more top-level domains. But as I said in the beginning, the idea was to create something memorable, and that is more apt to the human mind. So I think here we can still use a few more top-level domains, but I think the scarcity problem, or that there is no scarcity problem in the existing ICANN system. So the question could be, what else could be reasons to establish domain names outside the existing system, which could, for example, be maybe cost. ICANN is now taxing services. The registry has to pay a few cents. The registrar even has to pay a few cents, which are, of course, all very marginal amounts in the total scheme of things. So I'm not sure whether the cost base would be a real driver to create an alternative root zone for it. So this is why I'm at this stage still very skeptical that there would be any good use for these domain names. And therefore, if I would now have a gun to my head and I would have to decide between the two scenarios, I think the the blockchain-enhanced ICANN DNS system will probably serve the needs of humankind for the next few decades.
So my theory, though, in the next round, I mean, I hear all these announcements from D3 and other companies about .8 and things that they're going after, is that I feel like, at first I was like, okay, what top-level domains will people apply for in the next round? All the good ones are taken, right? All the, the 1,000 strings that are out there. And then brands, okay, the dot brands, there were lots of companies that went after them. Very few are using them. There are some exceptions, like Fox. But now it seems to me like we're going to see hundreds of applications from Web3 related companies. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing the inquiries at this point at CentralNIC from companies that are like, hey, we want to launch a new top-level domain. We're a Web3 company. Are you seeing kind of that influx for the next round?
Yes, definitely. So, and very often people come in with very ambitious plans, and they don't say, look, how would I register like one new top-level domain? They would come and say, like, how do I do 100 new top-level domains? So I think here also the market will bifurcate a bit in professionals, where we see operating a top-level domain as a business model, and rather go identity digital style and think in dozens or hundreds of top-level domains. There might be a few who maybe only take one top-level domain for a specific purpose. But yes, the demand is there, and it's obviously possible to run a new top-level domain profitably, even though, like in every industry, there's always 500 copycats for every idea, and then only a few really make profits out of it. But you say there's no good ones left. I would very much challenge that, because only 3-letter TLDs with depending on how the rules are, whether they would allow hyphens and other things, finally gives you short of 18,000 combinations. And in the first round, only 70 3-letter NTLDs have been registered, which still means that more than 99% of these are still available to grab up, including some strong keyword 3-letter names that have not been taken. So I think there's still ample of space to catch some very, very good new top-level domains.
Well, and a lot of, we weren't talking about crypto really back in 2012 as well. So, and .crypto will obviously be applied for in this round. So technology.
I'm very sure.
Yes. That's one thing we can bet on.
There might be some contention.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about monetization, because when I think back to the good old days of the domain industry, I think of Domain Sponsor, right, Fred, and the great conferences that you guys threw on the backs of all the money everyone was making from domain parking. And now the industry has shifted. At the Internet Commerce Association, it was all about selling domains, right, in the aftermarket for domains. But Team Internet Group is still very much involved in monetization of domains and other platforms. As you mentioned, you have the Parking Crew platform, which is one of the biggest. And then there's also the search arbitrage and such. What are you seeing in that market right now here at the beginning of 2025?
Right. I mean, the first part of your question was around trading domain names, and the second then generating parking income from them. So I think for trading domain names, as I just said, I think blockchain technology holds a lot of value in allowing better proof of ownership, better transfer processes, which should, all other things being equal, facilitate a growth in the aftermarket. It could also create more. Transparency. For example, which is possible, even in traditional markets. If you go to buy real estate in the United Arab Emirates, there's like a database where you can see every transaction on any piece of real estate, including the rental contracts, which makes a very transparent market. And blockchain-enhanced aftermarkets could also provide such data and give you like a full 100% error-proof track record for how much a domain name has been trading, what the parking income is, how much visitors there are, whatever kind of stats the market would evolve. These records would need to include. So here I generally see a positive technology enabled renaissance of the domain aftermarket. and also potential for new players to come into this market. We of course see a lot of concentration with Afternic having taken Dan.com out of the market, and so I think a little bit of fresh blood in that industry would not hurt. And there are of course companies like Fruits.co and others who are trying to basically jump into this opportunity. When we then look at domain name monetization through domain parking, this is of course a very important driver for the entire industry. Because what is great for a registry or a registrar provider, which is that you can't really own a domain name and you always have to pay renewal fees. This is a virtue for a registrar and a registry business model. For a domain name investor, it's of course a liability, because it's like property tax, where you just need to pay money every year to just keep your inventory. And domain parking has been the solution for this challenge, basically allowing people to make recurring income from the traffic that the domain name receives to offset your registration fees or your renewal fees, or maybe even make a profit, and some even a very nice profit. So this business has been very much reformed, because the domain parking pages that Parking Crew and also some of our peers have developed, that were smart enough to take any visitor from anywhere across the world, take the domain name, and combine these two data items in sending a very intelligent search syntax to Google to deliver back the exact best fitting ads, has been so powerful that there was then ultimately the epiphany that you could actually advertise park domain names on social media and native networks and generate a profit, because you could buy the traffic and make more money out of it than what you paid for it, which is then frequently referred to as arbitrage, which then was happening for a long time on an unregulated basis. But when Google basically allowed to do it systematically under some restrictions since 2017, this has completely taken over the market, and today arbitrage is about 20 times as big as domain parking. However, the entire domain parking industry, including our overlord Google, realize that there is that this has run the industry into some challenges. These websites have been built in a way that the users would only see the top ad, which is always the highest paying ad. This is why an overproportional amount of the clicks went always on the highest paying ads, which has then led to complaints by advertisers, because then the same advertiser was getting all the arbitrage traffic and then was seeing that 80% of their budget going into arbitrage campaigns. And so Google has taken some steps, which in the short term are inconvenient, to say the least. On the other hand, we at Team Internet, we always believed in the long-term vision of Google. They're not doing these things to create some pain, because they're also foregoing billions of revenue. But for them, the long-term health of the ecosystem is much more important. They want that advertisers happily write $1 million checks every month, because they know that their money is put at good work. This is why they've now introduced new templates, which basically make that the traffic or the clicks are more equally distributed among the different advertisers for the keyword, which takes a bit of the burden of the highest paying advertiser, but at the same time and then enhances or enlarges the total budget that we as an industry can address. And as always, when you have to change a well-designed system, you run into trouble. And so I think the domain parking that we've known, I like to compare it to the internal combustion engine, something that has been refined for 100 years, basically to come very close to the physical limitations of what is physically possible. And the new tools that Google gives us at hand are a bit like Tesla in 2008. Great vision, but crappy battery, no charging network. Your gearbox would crack because they are not made for the torque of an electrical engine. And But today, but already then, some people could see that ultimately this technology is superior to what we've been doing before, and so I would not let my good domain names lapse just now because maybe your parking income is now a few or even a few double-digit % lower than it has been historically. Ultimately, together with our partner Google, we and all our peers will overcome the current challenges in a more which will then create a more sustainable ecosystem where not the highest paying advertisers always getting all the arbitrage and parking traffic, and therefore just stick through to it. If you had your domain name for 30 years, don't drop it just now. Parking income will come up again eventually, and you will then still enjoy your domain ownership for many years.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I like to think about this from the perspective of, again, Team Internet Group has its hands in pretty much every aspect of the domain industry, right? Registries, registrars, monetization would be how I kind of divide that up. How do you think Web3, or let's say blockchain technology, will impact Team Internet Group in the next 5, 10 years?
Right, yeah, and what you say is actually true. So given that we are a registry, backend provider, a registrar, and a domain parking service, each of these services touches a double-digit number of domain names, and in total, there's 48 million unique domain names that we touch either as a registry, as a registrar, or as a parking provider.
Out of about, what, 350 million, I think, is the total universe?
That's right. And so the again, we believe that blockchain will enhance the. So that's the thing that I just take as granted, as a given. Blockchain technology will enhance domain ownership, including the aftermarket. So here, since we sold Snap names back in 2014, we have not been active in the domain aftermarket. I think this is a decision that we might now review, but we are still observing the space where technology takes us to build something that is not 2024 state of the art, but 2026 state of the art. We are already now seeing additional business from Web3 domain names, mostly coming through our brand shelter service, where we help large international trademark holders to protect their trademark in the domain space, who now already preemptively, even though they wouldn't resolve in all browsers, take all their all the main brands under .eth or other Web3 top-level domains. However, the total revenue from that is very pedestrian, and I couldn't even quote a number because it would never pop up in any revenue report. But technologically, we will always be there. Team Internet always had a vendor agnostic approach. We've not signed an exclusive agreement with Verizon. No, our idea was to offer every top-level domain on this planet, and we will also be open to any Web3 provider and plug them in and leave it to the market, whether they actually buy it or not. Time will tell. But for us as a business, it's just like today. It's not so important for us whether a customer chooses a .com or .net. We make money either way. We will just be as happy to sell a customer a .eth or .ape or whatever domain name if this becomes a major pocket of demand. So we'll prepare ourselves. We want to participate in this. However, my current conviction is that there's more potential in enhancing the existing 350 million domain names with blockchain technology to create a more fluid market here, safer ownership, more use cases, introduce smart contracts to the industry, where, for example, you could then sell a domain name but still participate in future flippings of the domain name. So I think it's blockchain technology is great. We are there to adopt it, and but again, as always, like we've not signed up exclusively with one certificate authority or exclusively with one registry. We at this stage would probably keep an agnostic approach and sign up with a multitude of providers, and then let the market decide who has the most popular offering in the market.
Excellent. All right. Well, Michael Riedl, thank you so much for coming today and talking about the state of the
Thank you,
domain
Andrew.
industry.
Thank you all.